Hi everybody, I'm on a long ride, so I thought I would talk. My mind is thinking, and I was thinking about why I believe the earth has a dome over it, and some of the different things that I have researched and found, like it's all like a puzzle, right? You may be studying one thing, you may be looking at one thing, and it fills in a piece for something else. And so there's been a lot of stuff throughout the years when I've been looking that confirm that we have a dome over it and that we can't get out of this. You know, if you want to believe in the flat earth, some people, I remember when I was Jehovah's Witness, they believed that there was a dome, like literally a round dome around the whole earth, and that was broken at Noah's flood, and that the waters above came in, and so it shattered. They believed that's what they taught. But if you look at the Milky Way, and I've heard somebody else say, no, I'm going to be just throwing out theories, right? These are theories, these are thoughts, there's nothing in stone, but it is where I've come to the conclusion of what I believe. But if you look at the Milky Way, I've heard the theory that the Milky Way is where the rip happened in the firmament. And, you know, there's so many things to show that we are in an enclosed environment. I mean, without going into flight plans and looking at where they're going to land for different things and how it doesn't match up with the maps that they give us, and how, you know, there's all of that. So I'm not going to, there's so much evidence along that, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about this other stuff that I've found along the way. So there is this, you know, the Milky Way. It looks like a big rip and a big scarring. It would be, if you have had a cut on your body and you didn't get it properly, you know, didn't have a surgeon that came and put it together, you're gonna get something. It's gonna look like the Milky Way. You're gonna get just a huge, you know, bulging kind of look. And then the Milky Way comes at the same time. It moves along like the firmament must move. I'm thinking this theory again. And then there is that when they've drilled into the ground, they can only get, I think it's like 8.5 miles, 7.5 miles, something along that. And that's it. They can't go any further. They can't go any further. Nobody has ever dug or done anything that can go any further. You know, I'm just in the car, so I can't prove any of this. But that is something that you will find everywhere. It's not just in conspiracy. So they cannot go past. And then there is this thing that they started to, this doesn't talk about the dome, but it does talk about in our environment, that our environment is enclosed. And then I started hearing about these rumors about this ocean underneath our ocean. And it was like, how can you have an ocean underneath the ocean? Is there a land and then another ocean? Will that be like groundwater? And, you know, I tried to figure it out. So I'm listening to this one talk, and they're talking about what they actually found. And I thought that was extremely interesting. What they found is they came down with their submarine and they got to a certain point, and even though there was water, the water was of a different density. The water was so thick, and if they tried to go into that water, it would just bounce and gyrate, and they were never able to get into it. They would bounce off of this water, but yet they could see that it was water, but the water itself was much thicker.
One of the most amazing things that I had ever seen in the bottom of the ocean, it was while filming for Blue Planet. It was in the Gulf of Mexico. And inside the ring of mussels was a lake. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm already underwater. And we went out over the water in this lake and tried to descend in it and bounced off. It was so super saline and dense that the submarine couldn't go down in it. We literally bounced off, and as we bounced off, we sent ripples heading back to the shoreline. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
So that was probably when they're drilling down is what they're encountering, why they can't go any further. So it's like the water's the deep, the water's below, right? The water's below. It's different than the waters that we have, that we drink, that's fluid, you know, because we know that water can be in so many different avenues, different types, right? Gaseous, ice, density, everything like that, right? Water can be different. And not only, and I know when I look at the sky, and I always said, you know, it's like it's water, you know, for years, forever looked at it. It was like, it's water past. There's something past, and we're looking at water. And so anyways, then you go into the Antarctic, right? You go into the Antarctic where we've got this wall of ice. And
is there a great difference between the top of the world and the bottom of the world?
There is. Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the south is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000, and it's a little bit chilly up there. So there's that big difference between the top and bottom of the world. The North really isn't very cold up there on the Arctic Ocean.
One of the arguments.
Many reports in ancient books, in many old books, like even in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, talk about explorers that went through and went to the Antarctic and came up with this wall, like the Game of Thrones, that wall that they had, like that is, in older books and older maps, it shows us being like a basin with the Antarctic all the way around the circle of the Earth. And it's like everything is sunk in, and it has this. So if you think, people think, oh, well, the Earth can't be flat because all the water would fall off, because that's the way that they try to disinformation us, right? When you were talking about Antarctic, we know that we can't go there. They've made it so that there's every country in the world pretty much owns or has they have the Antarctic Treaty, and you have to get permission from every single country to be able to go to the Antarctic. And you can't bring a motorized vehicle there. You have to carry your own waste product out. You can't do this, and you can't do it's impossible. You can't do it. There's just no way. So we have no way of knowing, because we're not allowed to go. There's a lot of
The Antarctic coastline, never once finding an inlet or path through or beyond the massive glacial wall. So the other question is, well, how come ships don't go off the sea if it's flat? How come ships don't fall off the edge? Well, here's why you don't fall off the edge. There's a 200 to 300 foot high wall that is the coastline of Antarctica. Once they start finding ways to get through the ice to get there, more and more expeditions and better ships are built and used to get there. Then you get to Admiral Byrd. Now, when Admiral Byrd goes down there several times, and one of the operations is called Operation High Jump. And you're like,
oh, geez.
Yeah, right. Operation High Jump. Operation High Jump. Really? Operation High Jump. I mean, you know, because they went out there with aircraft carriers and airplanes and stuff. You know, some real heavy equipment and stuff like that. Operation High Jump. So then he gets on TV, national TV, and he does this radio show where he talks about all of the natural resources down there. I mean, coal and uranium and stuff that fuel the world forever. It's wonderful. And you can go on YouTube and look up the Admiral Byrd news interview. I think it was on CBS. And it's wonderful. And all these nations are going down there, you know, Russia and Japan, all these nations are going down there. Check it out. Well, then he goes down after that interview. They go down on the next mission, which I believe was called Operation Deep Freeze. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. Everybody pulls out. They leave Antarctica. And all the nations that were down there doing whatever they were doing signed a treaty, the Antarctic Treaty, and I believe it was 1958 or somewhere thereabouts, saying, nope, nobody can stake a claim to Antarctica. And if you're going to go down there, you can only go down there for scientific reasons under carefully restricted guidance. But it's not a free for all. Nobody can just, hey, I'm going to go check out Antarctica and do a high jump on my own. No, can't do it. So when I look at the nations that signed the Antarctic Treaty, and I look at the nations that are putting forward quote unquote space videos of the Earth, they're the same people. So if I was to put on my tinfoil hat and play the conspiratorial role here, there definitely appears to be some very suspicious things that took place. And then all of a sudden NASA is formed. And then simultaneously, you have Russia and the United States doing high-altitude nuclear bomb testing.
Allowed to go. And there's a lot of stuff that's like that. We don't really know the size of our Earth. We don't understand. We just know where we are allowed to go, And anyway, so there's going to the Antarctic. We know that there's scientists and they've been studying, the ice and telling us, we're billions of years old and this is what happened at this time. But in this one video that I was watching from Flat Earth Brothers, they were talking about this guy had been to the Antarctic and he held this blue ice and he was told the story about what this blue ice was, and he had to.
Hello family, welcome back. I hope you guys are doing great. I wanted to pass something along that somebody shared with me a while back and I just haven't had a chance to share it, but it's extremely interesting. It's one of those things you just have to share, and the people I've talked to about it had never heard of it, so I figured maybe you haven't, and it's great that we share information that we come across, kind of break some of the mystery of what's going on beyond where we're allowed to explore. And this story is one of those that will blow your mind because it reveals sort of what we already assumed would be going on there. But this person that shared this with me was very kind and said, hey, this is really cool. Have you heard about this? And I haven't heard anything about it until they shared it. This channel here, Yup0123. And they said, I found this on Facebook and I think it's worth sharing with you all. I kept the original post's layout untouched to keep its originality. So they've broken it up. You'll see what I'm talking about, or what they're talking about here in just a second. And the story, I will scroll to it, starts right here. And this person reached out on one of those truther Facebook pages. There's lots of them where they were talking about the firmament. And they had a military background. And they said, I've never really believed in Jesus or done the whole church thing, but I think I've seen the stuff you guys are talking about here. I just didn't know what it was at the time. This person was in the Army from 1997 to 2000, and they said, I was sent to McMurdo Station in Antarctica. I was a helicopter mechanic and a crew chief, and they had volunteer tours open for guys to go there and work on the helicopters there. When they asked for volunteers, sorry, there's some typos here. I'll try to read it and say what I believe they were trying to say. But it says, when they asked for volunteers, a bunch of us applied, but only me and one other guy got accepted. The application process had a bunch of questionnaires that we had to fill out, and we had to sit for a bunch of one-on-one interviews. It was mostly just a bunch of questions about what our interests and beliefs were. It's weird that they would ask about their beliefs. I was sent to McMurdo Research Station in August of 1998. When we weren't busy de-icing the aircraft and working on them, we had time to hang out with the scientists at the research station. The military unit attached to McMurdo was small, and we didn't have our own separate facilities. We didn't have a PX or a media center. There was no chapel or chaplain, and we didn't have our own separate mailroom. We just had to share the same facilities with the scientists and researchers, so over time I got to be friends with a few of them. They had two different kinds of ice they worked on and studied. This is where it gets interesting. One kind of ice was the normal kind that we've all seen. They took cores of it out of boreholes in the ground. Just like normal ice, it was mostly clear and sometimes white, and it would melt into liquid water if it got warm. The whole area of Antarctica is covered in this kind of ice. But that wasn't their main kind of ice. The only time I ever saw them actually studying normal ice was when a film crew from National Geographic came by. The rest of the time, which was most of the time, the scientists were studying something they called sky ice. This stuff was totally different. We were never allowed to go into the laboratory areas of the station because the labs had to be kept super clean, and they said it would mess up their work if they risked letting too many people in the lab. But one time, one of the researchers that I was friends with showed me a piece of sky ice. You couldn't touch the stuff with your bare hands because it was so cold. And it wasn't clear or white like normal ice. It was solid blue. He said that's why they call it sky ice, because it was the exact same color as the sky. We had to wear thick, heavy going outside gloves to handle it. The stuff was so cold, it would instantly freeze your skin if you touched it. I don't remember what the temperature he said it was, but it was something like hundreds of degrees below zero, way colder than the normal ice that was outside. He had to carry it in a metal bottle that was kind of like a thermos. He let me play with the piece of it for a while. It felt lighter than a piece of normal ice of the same size, like it wasn't very heavy at all. It almost felt like you could throw it up in the air and it would just float back down. But I didn't try that. And it was also a little flexible when I tried to bend it. It didn't break like normal ice would, and even for a small piece, you could see through it. It was solid blue right from the surface. And here's the really weird part. It didn't melt into water. When it got warm, because we had it inside, it just started to shrink. It got smaller and smaller, but my glove never got wet. And there was no water on the floor. The stuff just turned into thin air when it got warm and vaporized. He said that was the reason why they had to study the stuff right there in Antarctica. You couldn't take the sky ice back to America to study it because it was almost impossible to keep it cold enough during transit. And then they shared a verse right here where it says, "And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it." And then we continue off where it says it would always vaporize into air and you'd have nothing left when you got back to the US, he said. Russian scientists had discovered the same problem when they tried to take the ice back to Russia. So that was why they all had research stations in Antarctica. After maybe 15 minutes of handling the piece of sky ice, it was almost completely gone. Just a tiny little bit was left, and my glove was dry the whole time. I'd never seen anything like it before or since, and that's unusual because I've always had an interest in scientific things. I think that's even why I got selected to go to Antarctica, because a big part of the interview was about science and what I believed about things. So I really thought it was cool to see something I'd never heard of before. The whole time I was at McMurdo, I heard people talking about the wall like that was a special place. It's pretty common to find ice walls and ice cliffs all over Antarctica. The whole place is ice, but it's all just normal white or clear ice. So I asked my friend where they get the sky ice from, and he said it comes from the wall. I don't remember exactly how he described it, but apparently there's a huge wall of sky ice in Antarctica. He said it was hundreds of miles inland from the coast. I never got to see it myself because I was only, and then I'm going to skip forward, stationed to McMurdo. I didn't get to go out on expeditions. He said it was the biggest natural structure in the world. Imagine that. He said that in the 1960s, the U.S. Army had a plan to bore a tunnel into the wall, but they didn't have a boring machine that could handle the super cold temperatures, so they had a whole testing project in Greenland where they developed ice tunnels and invented new boring machines that could operate in super cold temperatures. So this was back when they were going into forming NASA and all the other things that were kind of strange, the Antarctic Treaty, around that time, pretty close to it. And he says, like they did this whole big thing in Greenland for just practice. So it's like they were practicing to bore into the sky ice. I'm not an expert on that, but that's just what he told me. Then, once they had the new boring machine figured out, they brought it to the ice wall, or to the wall in Antarctica. He said that the machine bored a tunnel. I don't remember exactly, it was like 5 or 10 miles into the wall, but that they never broke through the other side of the wall, and that they still don't know how thick the wall is even to this day. And I'm probably not remembering this part correctly, but I think he said that at first the floor of the tunnel was solid rock, but after a mile or two in, the floor was sky ice, like it was sky ice underneath after a certain point, or something like that. And apparently the wall slowly builds itself back up. So it slowly builds itself back up after you cut it, because after a year or so, the tunnel had shrunk smaller all by itself, like a self-healing wound. It starts closing up. They had to leave the boring machine inside the wall because the tunnel shrunk too small to get it back out. And after a few decades, the tunnel was completely gone, like the part of the wall was solid again. He said that now the scientists were trying to use technology to figure out how thick the wall is. He said something about putting earthquake sensors all along the wall, and that somehow you could measure the signal from an earthquake to see how thick the wall is. But he kind of lost me on that part. I never really thought about any of that after I left. It was really weird stuff, but I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. But then a few weeks ago, I saw a map of the wall in Antarctica, except the map was all flat and crazy looking, and it showed the wall going all the way up over the whole Earth. So since then, I've been trying to learn more about the sky ice that I saw and the wall that I heard about, but I can't find anything at all. So now I'm really wondering if there could be a connection here. And that's how I found this group. So I hope that maybe some part of my experience will help someone figure something out. Well, thankful to that person. If they were telling the truth, that is some very interesting information given what we know surrounds us. We know that the firmament's not just made out of ice. It's something special. That could just be something near the foundation to prevent you from going all the way to it. The Father's design is very complex, and he has foreknowledge. He knows what mankind's going to try to do. Those little nuclear bombs they shot at the firmament was nothing to the firmament. They can't break it. They've tried. If they could, they would, but they can't. And this is just one of those stories that confirms a lot of what I had assumed would be going on. I always thought, man, if they are out there and they can go to it, they're probably trying to drill through it. And if they are, how have they not gotten through it already? And that would answer the question for you, because it closes up as you go through it. But this was back in the 60s. There's no telling what they're trying now, mostly guarding it. I'm sure that's the biggest job they have, is keeping us from going there. And if you do go there, you can only go to certain places. It is tens of thousands of dollars for a one-way ticket. Otherwise, many of us would have already gone there, tried to do some sneaking around and investigating. But this video here, it only had like 300 views. But really cool stuff. Wanted to pass this along. I know the days of censorship have it to where you can't find stuff like this anymore. And I remembered putting it in my firmament playlist. I just wasn't sure if you guys had heard about this and wanted to pass it along to you. Answers some questions that most of you, if you're like me, had about what's going on out there and what are some of the properties near the foundation of the firmament, if they're even close to it. Could go on like that for many, many miles. Who knows? We'll find out soon someday. The firmament itself will roll away like a scroll, but that second day of creation, where he put this expanse for signs and for seasons, and letting us know that he will return very soon. And it's one of those things that we're sensing is right around the corner due to the way things are going in the world and what they're trying to prepare us for and all the division. But they're preparing for a war. I'll go over that in a little while in another video, what they're preparing for and how you can be prepared yourself to not fall for the deceptions to come.
So if you think about it, because we were told in the Bible that there's waters above, right? And there's water, God made the separation between the waters above and the waters below, and then there's the earth. So we've got the waters below us, which is that ocean that is made out of such dense, and I guess it waved and it does all of that, but it's such dense water that they couldn't go down with their submarine. It was like a separate, the depth, separate, what is it in the Bible that it says the great void or the great, anyways, and then we've got this blue sapphire ice, which the Bible talks about his throne, the being like that, blue sapphire, you know. So it seems like every time that I look a little bit more deep, I find that science is finding what the Bible told us, and this has been hidden from us, you know, because are we in, if that's the case, if we have a dome, which is this blue ice that is so thick and they can't really penetrate it, and it's kind of like the same thing of what's going on, maybe the density of the waters below is a little bit more fluid, then the firmament was made hard in itself, in freezing, and think about this. Why have we not went back to the moon? Why is it that they've lost all the footage of the moon? You gotta ask yourself these questions. Why is it that they lost the trajectory, how to maneuver, but they were able to do it in a tin can back in the 60s? Like, come on. When you start to look at, after looking, when I started looking and seeing how truthful NASA was, you know, the Nazis that we gave pardon to, that went now and formed NASA and were associated with Disney and all of these other corporations. Think about that. You know, all of these movie making ones to be able to delude our minds, to be able to cast spells, to program us, which they tell us with all of the stuff, you know. You get your program, it's programmed tonight, let's go, and now you get to cast, you know, you get to cast it to your TV, and anyways, I mean, that's just another thing. But we see that these people have, you know, are telling us this, and truly should we be trusting who they are in the first place as what our reality was? And there's so much of these oddities about our Earth that NASA has never went back. They've lost all the footage. They lost the trajectory. They can't get past the Van Allen belt, which is the dome. They can't get past it. It's so dangerous. They can't get past the radiation, they say, and stuff. And then we even have footages of NASA hitting the dome. I mean, you can believe that or you don't. But we have also things like Project Fishbowl that they did in the Antarctic, trying to break the dome, and we've got so many different projects. I'm not really well versed in this to go over it, but go to some of these ones, not to the ones that just want to tell you that you guys a bunch of idiots for believing in this stuff. Go to the ones that are actually showing you the science. I'm just talking about theory. I'm just throwing out theory, so I'm not talking about the science, but there is some amazing stuff that you can go and find. People have done experiments to see what is our realm. What is our realm? And when you start to read the Bible and the Book of Enoch and everything, you understand that there is this is in an enclosed, it shows in those books, it's an enclosed environment, and the stars and the sun and the moon and that were all made for the planet, for the earth, for man, eventually, for who was on this. It was all made together. It wasn't made in this spinning vortex going through at some insane speeds. You know, we've been told not to look, not to hear, not to see that reality is real. We are told that everything that we see and we can touch and we can taste and we can hear is not true. They are. They're the professionals. They've been out there. They've taken the pictures. And yet, when people send up balloons that are not part of the people who are doing the conspiracies, because that's what a conspiracy means. They're conspiring against us and telling us something different. And they don't use a concaved lens, a rounded off lens. They get the earth like this. They get the earth like this. It's what the way they film it. They film it flat. But when you go up in a plane, and the plane windows are concaved. They're flat when you're on the outside, but on the inside of the ones, because they're pressure treated, right? Because you don't want to have them exploding and sucking you out through the window when you're going through the plane, when you're going through the air at that speed. So they're pressure treated, so there's multiple layers, right? But then the last layer has a concave. It has a eyeball kind of shape to it, right? Which gives everything that you look a little bit of a curve. So then you think that when you're, and you should not be able to, by the way, scientifically, anybody who's been in the plane should not be able to see a curve, period. Even that, you shouldn't be able to do that, right? If you're starting to see a curve, then the earth is really, really small. So, I mean, that doesn't even make sense. But NASA shows the earth with this, it's all real curved and everything like that as they're going, but they're using fakery on you. So I mean, this is the stuff that I've been collecting in my mind to be able to make my decision as to what kind of environment that we live in. And it makes sense that why they're able to do so many things with to be able to send microwaves, to be able to listen on your cell phone, because things would bounce off of the firmament instead of just going out all over. We have an enclosed world, at least that's the way I see it. And there's the mounting, these are just a few that I think are really interesting about some of the things that I thought that was really interesting about our environment, what we live in. But there's so much more. There's so much science behind everything that I'm talking about and more. So it behooves you to do your own investigation instead of just putting out a nasty comment like, you're an idiot. Because I get that, you're an idiot. You obviously lost your brains. Well, this idiot who has obviously lost her brains has read a lot. And has done a lot of research. I probably have more knowledge than most, I know I do, than most professors in different subjects, and most people that get the Holy Spirit that drives them, when the Holy Spirit implants in you, when you become to learn things about God, to learn things about what He's done, you become insatiable. And you just dig and dig and dig. And that is one of the gifts that He's given me, is to dig. What a blessing and a curse at the same time. All good deed gets punished, truly. This was probably, the flat earth was the one that really upset my family. It really got them angry. It's amazing. Just to say that to people makes them angry. And God told me a long time ago, if you are looking at something and it makes you angry, look, because it's a brainwashing tool. It's to make you that's what they've done. That's what they've done. They've been, everything that we're seeing right now, what's happening right now in 2021 in August, I think it's the 11th of August, is a psychological op on you. Everything that we're seeing. Nothing is real. I just went back to looking at the Corey Good kind of people where they're talking about, the planets and the aliens that are going to come and stuff. But the Bible tells us who they are. They tell us, and they talk about, Corey Good talks about the reptilians and stuff. Well, the Bible talks about the reptilians. They're seraphim. They're an angel, an actual angel. God made angels. Some of those angels, the seraphim, the dragon, turned against God, and they became Satan, which is, is somebody who rebels. There's many Satans. And so anyways, those things are real too, but they're not coming from out there. They're coming from the heavens. And the seraphim, the dragons, were ones that were very high up and got offended, and some fell. Anyways, that's another topic. Sounds like a whole bunch of crazy talk, but I'm going to leave it at that. Tell me what you guys think. Have you guys looked into this? Are you convinced of that we are in a round Earth floating through the galaxy, or are you exploring whether we are on a dome? We have a dome and we are in a flat Earth. Anyways, we'll drop it there. Talk to you later. Live a lovely life.